Oscar Isaac is trending #1 this morning, as he should, as the man is his own special effect. Yes, welcome to my breakdown of Moon Knight Episode 1, and as I promised, the series kicks off with a bang. It's so good. Stephen Knight is a fabulous creation. Love this character. And one of my chief complaints about, well, I've only seen the first 4 episodes, is that Stephen Grant unfortunately gives over control a little bit too much to Marc in the episodes ahead. Because, you know, this whole episode, we fall in love with Stephen. And then he is taken away from us. You know, not entirely, but, you know, Marc just can't compete. So how do you break down a show which has very few Marvel Easter eggs? Well, we're going to talk about some of the hints that they have. There are a couple, there's like 1 or 2, maybe just one thing from the comic really, but hey, it's an Easter egg. And then we're going to talk about the episode, and I'm going to make sure you didn't miss anything because it's a very well written and well directed, well acted, well edited, great sound design. I mean, this episode is firing on all cylinders. There's a lot of great stuff to pay attention to and to make sure that you've caught all the clues that they've given us. This is a huge info dump. It's done really well. As I said, Jeremy Slater is a heck of a writer, and this and the last episode are the only 2 that he wrote, and that's unfortunate. I wish that he'd written all of them, or at least found writers who are on the same level. All right, so let's get started, and I'm excited to hear your own thoughts about the episode and observations down below. So by the way, they spent a lot of money on the song catalog. Because, you know, good songs are expensive, but it was worth every penny. They had a great soundtrack here. I do miss the Marvel, you know, intro, but still, it was good stuff. So we actually start out with Arthur Harrow, who's got a real alligator theme going on here, but no alligator skin, because that would be wrong. But he's got the dual alligator, a lot of duality. That's going to be one of our other favorite games on this breakdown. Spot the duality, spot the mirror effect. It's, you know, you would think they would overdo it, but I think it's so well done every time we see it that I get a great kick out of it. But even with Ahmet, you can see the duality of the alligator, the crocodile heads for the cane, and also on his tattoo, which we find out is interactive later on in this episode. But first off, Arthur Harrow's going old school, and you know, he has like his little morning ritual, and it involves breaking that glass after having he's having a shot of water, thank you very much, and then like kind of like in some weird, you know, kinky Jesus style. Talk about kinky boots, right? Or kinky sandals. He puts the glass in his sandals and then he walks out with this cane. And they did a great job with the sound design because you can hear each crunch. But because it's Disney, there's no blood. They're like, it just soaks into the shoes. I would have loved it if he left bloody footsteps wherever he went. He doesn't care. Come find him. He'd love for you to talk to him so he could judge you. But they can't do that. But anyway, I guess what they're trying to show is this is a guy not to be messed with. And you'll discover where this is in an episode very soon. I'll give you slight hints as to what's coming, but I'm not going to spoil anything because, you know, I want you to be able to discover it yourself. But you want a little bit of a hint. That's why you watch a breakdown. So Stephen wakes up. He's tied to the bed, not in a fun way, and you can see that you can see what his routine is. So he's got all this sand around his bed, so that if he walks out of it, you can see he'll leave a footprint. Although, as I said while we were doing the watch along, why doesn't if he can jump into the bed and not leave any footprints, why does he assume he can't jump out? Basically, because he has this tape on the door, basically Stephen assumes when he sleepwalks that he's just kind of like mindless. He doesn't assume that perhaps when he sleepwalks he's quite clever. Because these are all things that could be put back, which is, we discover clearly what's happening. So this is, first of all, I'm very curious as to who he's calling every time he calls his mom. Is it really his mom? He keeps leaving messages. Like, what's that number? That's very interesting to me. That's gotta be something. They wouldn't just put that in there. Maybe his mom's a real person and she'll show up and that'll be really, maybe it'll be funny. Maybe it'll be important to the story. Maybe it'll be both. But this fish is important to the story. Got the very first character poster from, thank you very much for the episodes. They always release. We'll see if they release any posters tomorrow or like they usually do it. No, actually, they usually do it the Monday or Tuesday after. But this goldfish already got a poster, and he's telling his mom thanks for the postcards. I guess, yes, she travels a lot, and he says his fish wants to know why he doesn't take him anywhere. I thought that was very charming. And also they established the fish only has one fin. The first time I watched this episode, I kept thinking about the dorsal fin on top, and I was like, of course he has only one fin. What kind of freak fish do you have, man? But then I realized watching it this time, he's talking about the little flippers. So he has I wonder what happened to the poor fish that he gets rid of, but only one fin. And Steven relates to him. Now, I also feel this has to be a plant. Why would he come out and be like, why do you sell all these brooms in front of my house if he's not going to Jackie Chan it with the props later, right? He hasn't done it through episode 4, but I feel like he has to do it at some point because look, those are such prop brooms, right? They have all these different bright colors. They're all ridiculously clean and fresh. I mean, not to insult that guy's wares. Maybe he sells top-notch quality brooms, but he is a street vendor. I think they'd have a little more character, but why so colorful? So it's hilarious to me. So he's going to work. Oscar Isaac said he did research about feeling that he lived in a Jewish neighborhood. But even when you freeze frame this, you don't see that reflected anywhere here. And, again, I just can't believe that they didn't honor that part of the character, especially because it was on Oscar Isaac's mind. When he was on set, you think he'd be like, I thought we were going to honor Marc Spector's Jewish heritage. So anyway, he's on the bus. Again, so charming. And all these people are being mean to him. He looks nice. So what if he fell asleep on your back? He's not robbing you. So what if he wants to read your paper, lady? Come on. So again, look, duality, lots of reflection. So here's a reflection of a puddle. A lot of puddles in London. What a place for him to live. It rains all the time. So he's going to work. And where does he work but an Egyptian museum? Of course he does. Oh, look at his pants. That's fantastic. I gotta tell you, I love, white socks and dark pants and shoes. It's a fun look. All right. So this girl is a jerk, and she puts a piece of gum on this display. Like, what the hell, kid? Put it in a wrapper like a normal person. But he's very nice about it. And so we get some exposition, and he's like, let me talk about organs and how, everybody knows this story. Most people went through, as I said, an ancient Egyptian phase, and everybody knows the story about how they prepare mummies, because it sticks with you. With the basically a wire hanger pulling out your insides through your nose. All right, except the heart, because Steven points out that that's needed for judgment. And judgment is a huge theme with Moon Knight. So pay attention to that. So that's our first introduction to it. But here's some more judgment. Donna's very judgy. Although, I think you have to be fair from her side. He's constantly late, constantly a scatterbrain. I think it becomes clearer as we watch this episode that he probably misses some days of work. And Donna has not fired him. So she's actually pretty cool. All right? We just are catching Donna like way into this relationship. So she's like, hey, Stevie. And he's like, it's Steven. And then this, a tour guide, and he, clearly would like to be a tour guide too. But she's like, hey, we still on for Friday? And he's like, what? Are you asking me out on a date? And she's like, pretty funny, because she thinks he's just teasing her. And even Donna is surprised, and Steven is surprised too. And this leads to a wonderful gag about what is a vegan going to eat at a steakhouse. And I thought it was so funny. He's like, bread, salad, don't ruin my date, Donna. But look, they have a good vibe. So they're in the back in the storeroom at the museum. And he's like, hey, I'm just trying to point out that the Aeneid, right? They're missing some gods from this pantheon. Like they're really playing up the Egyptian gods. And she's like, stop trying to convince me that you should be a tour guide. And he's like, I'm not doing that, but I like the way he says, that's crushing though. That's just a crushing blow. And I actually like these little figures that she's pricing. I'm like, those are creepy. I wouldn't want that in my house, but I would purchase them for the gift shop. I feel they would move. And so he's going home, and the security guard doesn't even know his name. He's a horrible security guard. He's like, see you, Scotty. And he's like, it's Steven with a V. And I love this shot as he goes out into the night. He's just so alone, but just so adorable. He has a warmth to him still anyway. Oh, I love it. He's so cute. All right. Got baggy pants on. All right, here's your Easter egg from the comics. Now, I don't believe he ever actually was like a living statue in the comics, but I believe that's supposed to be Crowley, one of Moon Knight's, Marc Spector's, or his multiple personalities, friends, part of his entourage. And he's a homeless individual who, particularly in the Jeff Lemire run. So he looks just like that, except for all the gold stuff. But I think that's supposed to be Crowley. But so anyway, this is Stephen's friend who just, I can't believe that guy doesn't break character. You can't even wink at him. Stephen actually gives him 2 tips, but he's having his dinner with him, and he's like, he appreciates the company. And I love this moment when this couple comes up and asks for a photo, and Stephen's like, oh yeah, sure. And he's like, don't forget to tip. It was great. And then he's talking about this date and how excited he is. And he's like, oh, if I am to have a girlfriend. And I thought that was just so hopeful and charming and sweet of him. He was like, I got to get rid of this, this thing, the big, the stuff tying me to the bed, because that's just the definition of a red flag. And I think, again, kudos to Crowley for not breaking character to be like, tell me about it. That's a deal breaker. So I love this shot of him getting up and leaving and giving another tip. And as he walks away, so it's the duality, part of it's a puddle, but the part that you think is the puddle is actually, as a leaf falls into it, is the reflection, meaning you don't know what's up and what's down. And that's fantastic, because that's how Stephen feels. So you see you see the other end of his ritual, and now he's getting into bed, and he puts out the sand, puts on the tape, and then he has got to stay awake. And I love this tape. This is a great tape. I have the Calm app myself, so I relate to this. So he has all these different things to keep him awake, and it's a great montage. Montage, man! Love it! This is a good one. So the voice is saying, read a book. Is there a chapter, an exciting chapter you'd like to be a part of? And of course, what is he reading about? But ancient Egypt. So this also shows and makes sense that he does know his stuff, and that's going to come into play later in this show. Stephen has to know some stuff. So he's studying the ancient Egyptian gods. I love this of him throwing the Rubik's Cube up in the air. Although who hasn't done that, in bed, played around with stuff and accidentally hit themselves in the face? I was just waiting for that to happen. And plastic, even light plastic, can really hurt from a distance. I've fallen asleep with my iPad and it's fallen down, and that's not good. Don't do that. So now he's also reading about the rift between God and man. That's really important. So, because, again, avatars, all this stuff, you're going to see that come into play. He just thinks it's the stuff of history, though, and mythological beliefs. Little does he know how real it's about to get. So he thinks he's staying awake. Bam! He wakes up with his jaw broken. Now, I believe they took out the shot where he falls down that we saw from the trailers, because you're going to see hints of that. But this is really fascinating. So he wakes up, his jaw is broken, and he manages, because Khonshu, the moon god, Egyptian moon god, who I'd never heard of before Moon Knight, he's a lesser god, but not anymore. He got picked up by Marvel, baby. Kevin Feige, turning B characters into A characters. Or C characters even sometimes. But anyway, he's able to adjust and put his jaw back. And look where he is. The hills are alive with the sound of Khonshu? What? The voices in your head. They're singing. That's a great location, though. This is Slovenia. Slovenia. They shot in Slovenia. Are any of you from Slovenia? It's apparently a beautiful country. I'm very impressed. So he looks around. There's a village down below, and he hears a voice, and that voice is F. Murray Abraham, who had an also very startling conversation with Oscar Isaac back in Inside Llewyn Davis. One of my favorite conversations ever, actually, because he listens to Oscar Isaac's character play, and he goes, I don't think there's a lot of money here. And I love the frankness of that business conversation. So I love that they're reunited. And Khonshu's like, not this guy. I hate this guy. And Stephen's like, what are you talking about? And he has the scarab in his pocket. Scarabs. So popular in movies. Hollywood loves scarabs. Of course, remember the Mummy with scarabs everywhere, literally. So he hears this voice, and he senses Khonshu behind him. A living visual effect. And so he turns around and he's like, what? And he sees this castle behind him. And the guy up there, he waves to the guy, and I love that the guy waves back. The guy's like, hey, but look, that window's broken. So he fell out that window. And for some reason they decided, it's a very famous thing about screenwriting. end your scenes, start your scenes as late as possible and end them as early as possible. So it seems in the editing room, they were like, we can still shave this down. So that guy's just waving at him, which I think is very funny. It's so idyllic. It's so very Fantasyland. Also owned by Disney. I love me some Fantasyland. So this guy's like, what the hell are you doing? And they open fire, and look, he's running through a fantasy land. Look at that castle. I couldn't find the castle like this in Slovenia, so I don't know if that's even a real castle. That could be a CGI castle, but why pay for that? It doesn't seem to factor into the story at all. And I don't think that's where he just was. Was he? Was he in that? Was he up there? Because then they've cut to much later in the running. But look, he's running through, and look at the beautiful flowers, and those guys are chasing him, and he gets into town where it's a little weird. And so he puts on this hood. Oh, by the way, he's dressed a little differently. I think they were a little too subtle on this, because this is stuff that this is a little cooler than Steven's look. Hoodies are totally Marc's thing, including Moon Knight. So, and I don't think the color of the hood is an accident either. So he puts on this hood, he blends in with the crowd, and here's Arthur Harrow. Oh, he does not blend. He leads, thank you very much. And I think that Ethan Hawke's body language in this role is impressive. It's even more impressive a little later. We'll talk about it when we get to him in the museum. So he's talking to his peeps, and he's like, hey man, we're going to create heaven here on earth by getting rid of all the bad people. And of course, the bad people are the ones we don't like. The ones that Ahmet says is bad. Standard cult procedure. But better setting. So anyway, people can step up for judgment, and this guy volunteers, and you'll soon find out just how risky this is. So he uses this cane as like the pendulum of justice, and Steven's watching, and you can see here's where the tattoo gets interactive. So we see two different versions of how this can go. So the first one goes real well, and the tattoo is green for go. You're good, buddy. Continue to live your life. And the jaws close, and that's how we've reached judgment. And so this older woman's like, me next, do me. And she's like, I want to know Harrow, and he's like, call me Arthur. And I'm like, excellent way to get his name across to the audience. And Ethan Hawke, very well done. It's hard sometimes to deliver these lines without making it obvious that you're doing exposition, but real organic work here, guys. So she gets judged. Oh, look, it turns red. Oh, she gets red. Stop. This is where your life ends. Literally. But first she's like, I'm a nice lady. Look at me. And he's like, I believe you. But clearly, you turn real bad at the last minute, apparently. Because Ahmet judges your whole life, even the part that you haven't lived yet. And then decides, it's like Minority Report. I saw some reviewers bring that up. This will never come to pass because Ahmet has stepped in. And he sucks the life force out of that lady. And as they take away her lifeless, mummy-like body, one of his henchmen, that guy from the window, because they don't want to pay too many henchmen, they're like, we can only have one guy have dialogue. So here he is, and he comes up, and they have matching coordinating outfits, which I appreciate. And he's like, I'm sorry, he has the scarab, he's here in town. And I appreciate how smart a villain Arthur Harrow is. So he has everybody kneel down. He says, I think he's speaking Egyptian. By the way, apothecary, I think, is German, but I know this is Slovenia, so I'm not quite sure the language they speak in Slovenia. But anyway, I do love European pharmacies and how they have a green color scheme instead of red and white like North America. I love it! All right, so anyway, everybody knows to kneel down, and I love that Steven's like, oh, bollocks. I love it. He has all these like really cliche British catchphrases, which, as the rest of the world, we think it's delightful. I wonder how you in the UK feel. It would be funny to have someone do like the American version of that. Aw, shucks, or dag nabbit, because it's like dated too a little bit. It's really funny. And so he's like, whoa, hey everybody, and because Arthur Harrow's like, I know you, you're a mercenary. And he's like, whoa, I'm a gift shopist, which is another great line. And so Harrow's like, fine, then give me the scarab. And then you have this great bit of acting, and I gotta tell you, Ethan Hawke is looking so much like Harrison Ford, it's a little distracting. But anyway, he's like, I'm not, and he's very cool. He doesn't lose his cool. He stays calm, and he's like, don't mess around with me, man. Just give me the scarab. And Stephen really wants to give him the scarab, but Khonshu and Marc have a different idea. And I do love the way like they make him like kind of cartoonishly, or I guess comedically, it is cartoonish, walk away, right? He's like, I can't control my limbs. And then here's another amazing shot. This is the reflection in a door, and they're dragging him to that door. So don't go inside. Once he gets in there, it would be over. So he knows that can't happen. So this guy comes out to help drag him in. They're wrestling the scarab away from him. They get it, and then he does this great thing. And, Oscar Isaac does a great job rolling his eyes back in his head, and they do this great quick cut, like great sound too. And I just think it's a really great way to transition. And he comes back, and he is dispensed with these bad guys, and dispensed in the harshest form. Again, they've been judged, but they were already doing bad stuff. Look at that woman shielding her child. And, he's killed men and women henchmen. He's an equal opportunist mercenary. And he's like, and Arthur Harrow, look at that. I love that Arthur Harrow is like, what is happening here? This is different. He's observing. And boy, I don't want to know how that got so much blood on it. And I wonder if they will edit it out. Because, it was recently revealed that they kind of took out some of the violence in one of the episodes of Falcon and Winter Soldier. So I'm sure maybe a Disney exec will be like, maybe not. Let's see. So anyway, yeah, he got that back. And this is the best still frame I could get of it. But I loved this tracking shot with the Steadicam as he runs past Arthur Harrow. And he's like, I'm sorry. And Arthur Harrow is just looking at him in amazement, like, what is happening here? How am I going to deal with this guy? It's just really well done. So he gets into this truck, and I think it's great that it's a cupcake truck because it adds to the surrealism that makes him feel that maybe this is a dream. So he's driving off, and I love the idyllic countryside, and here he goes. And there's cupcakes in the van. I mean, it is definitely surreal. And it's a beautiful setting. It's just gorgeous. Way to shoot the location. They really did a great job getting the most out of it. Again, I'm surprised that this woman giving him the finger. I mean, it's funny, but I'm surprised it's in a Disney project. Look at that road. That's fantastic, right? Very James Bond a little bit. So I agree with some of you that the green screen is quite obvious and weak in parts. Like this is a moment where you're like, that guy just kind of like jumps off from off camera, and he's like, what are you talking about? I'm in the scene. And he comes in, and he's in the scene now. He gets a cupcake in the face, and things are going bad. It looks like Steven's not going to make it, so time to switch over. So he's like having a struggle. He's not only fighting these other guys, but he's fighting himself. Steven and Marc are fighting for control of this body. And so he wakes back up. Oh, and look, he has a gun, and that guy's dead. And they have this truck come. Khonshu's like, look out, truck. And I thought this was so brutal, but I loved it. But it was so brutal for a MCU Disney Plus show. Look how that car slammed into the truck. I mean, crunch. That is amazing. It was very visceral, very powerful. You could feel the force. Like, it was very well done. So these two cars are the ones left. And you can see one of the followers' tattoos on their wrists. And he switches over again, and he wakes up, he's driving backwards with his windshield out. And again, just to show how serious that car goes over the side of the cliff. And then there goes the cupcake, again, just to add to the dreamlike quality of it. And his windshield's out, and he turns his windshield wipers on. But then these guys get taken out in a CGI avalanche. Like, one of their bodies even moves before it gets hit by a log. I'm like, ooh. And he wakes up, and he's like, oh my God, it's Michael Bay having a nightmare about bad VFX. But he's like, oh, honey, he's like, it must have been a dream, because look, he's still tied to the bed. And he laughs. Oscar Isaac breaks your heart multiple times during this episode. I love it. So he gets up, takes the tape off, he's having a cereal. He's like, and I love that he's like, I wonder what fishies dream of. And I'm like, you're just a delight, Steven. But he realizes that fish has 2 flippers. So he's like, what? How to grow a flipper back? So he goes to the pet shop. There it is in the blender, just like the poster. And he's like, well, how did this happen? And she's like, look, I told you yesterday. And he's like, I wasn't in here yesterday. She's like, yes, you were. And he looks at the clock, and he's like, is that the time? The time's wrong. And she has the best line. She says, the fish is wrong. The time is wrong. You're not quite right. And I'm like, oh, that's a great line. So he's late for his date. So he's getting ready again. More mirrors, more multiple Stevens. It's great. Multiple Marcs. They keep showing 3, which weirds me out. You'll see. I don't want to give it away, but I'm surprised. I don't know why they have the 3, but yet they don't seem to have the 3. Okay, so anyway, There he is. He doesn't like his first look. They're both good looks. He just looks so cute sitting there. I mean, I think he melts everyone's heart. Everyone's like, I'd love to sit in that other chair. So the waiter even is sympathetic, but he keeps it real too. He's like, it's not looking so good for your date, huh? So he decides to call her, and she's like, whoa, you got some nerve. And he's like, what? I'm at the restaurant. She's like, oh, I ate steak on Friday by myself. And he's like, yeah, Friday today. And she's like, today's Sunday. And I don't understand why she doesn't, maybe something happened to him. Why didn't she check in with him? Why did she just assume that she was stood up? He seems like such a nice guy. She should at least give him the benefit of the doubt. Although I think when he explains it, he's like, I sleepwalk and I miss 2 days. You're going to be like, this seems like a lot. But he does seem really nice. So anyway, she gets very angry. She doesn't want to hear him out. She doesn't want to give him a second chance. And she says, lose my number. And then he really breaks our heart. And some of the best acting I've ever seen in anything, but particularly a comic book property. Especially Marvel, because, it's like, this is like Robert Downey Jr. level acting, bringing that to the MCU. And he's like, do you want anything? The kitchen's about to close. And so Steven, a vegan, says, you know what? I'll have a steak, because he's just going to treat himself. And he's like on the verge of tears because he feels like his life's never going to work out. He's never going to get over this, and he's never going to have a regular life. And he's trying to choke back tears, and the guy's like, what kind of cut would you like? And I love that he says the best bit. He doesn't know cuts of steak. And then he's like, how do you like it cooked? And he says, oh, yeah, great. Great, that's great. So the waiter says, well done. And I wish that someone at the restaurant had overheard and been like, what are you doing to that poor guy? He's had a bad enough day as it is. You're going to give him an overcooked hunk of beef to chew on for hours? Medium rare at the most. We had a fun conversation about that during the live watch along. We all agreed that medium rare is the highest you go. How do you like your steak cooked? Some of you might defend like well done, but I don't get you. I'm a medium rare person personally. Although I've had places where I feel like I should have gone rare, because everybody, of course, it's not an exact science. I like it pink in the middle, but warm, not cool. Who wants cold steak? All right, so anyway, I got distracted by delicious steak, but he's very sad. I don't think the steak's going to fill the hole in his heart, but maybe chocolate will. Don't eat your feelings, Steven. So he throws away the flowers. He could have kept them in his house, but he's calling his mom and he's telling her the date went well. Oh, he's breaking our hearts. So he goes home, and this reminded me a little bit of Catwoman. Batman Returns, Selena Kyle coming home and also feeling that her life was just never going to work out. Although she got a more distinct other personality. So he's scarfing down the chocolates that he bought for her. That's so sad. You should have saved them, Steven, and given them to her next day at work and been like, please. I think she would have forgiven him. He's just so sweet. So he's talking to the fish, and he's like, you want some chocolate? Don't kill the fish to make this worse. I don't think you can give animals chocolate. I know you definitely can't give a dog chocolate. So anyway, he drops the chocolates on the floor, because of course he does. This day is just awful. But he notices some scuffs, and he's like, what's this? And there is apparently someone's moving this table. And he finds out when he moves the table, he can reach this really poorly placed piece of wood. So what's in there? It's in his own house. We thought that was maybe hidden in some kind of tomb. No, it's his own home. And it's a flip phone, which means he's a villain. It's a flip phone with a power cord to keep it charged, and a key, which we will find out soon where that goes to, but not this episode. So he puts his glasses on because he's just adorable, and he's going through the phone, and it's got all these calls from Layla in Duchamp, which is AKA Frenchie. Not Frenchie from the boys, but Frenchie from the Moon Knight comics, who has not been cast. There is a French character who played by an actor who tragically passed away before this show could air, but that's not Frenchie. They might have combined the two characters in the show. But anyway, Layla calls right where he's on the phone, and he decides to answer. He decides to say yes to life. So he picks it up, and she starts yelling at him, and she's like, what's with this accent? And he's like, I just found this phone in my flat. So British, I love it. And she calls him Marc, and he's like, why'd you call me Marc? Because that's what Khonshu kept saying during our Fantasyland escapade. So he's like, why'd you call me Marc? And she hangs up, or they get cut off somehow, and he tries to call her back, and that's when Marc decides he has to do something. So he hears someone calling his name, and he goes to the bathroom, which has a weird door. I'm like, is this apartment up to code? And when he looks in there, the reflection is shaking its head at him. And so he turns the light on, and it's still him. He's like, whoa, what's going on? So he hears, I think the lights start to flicker, and you can see when he turns around, the reflection stays the same. Marc's watching him. So everything starts to go crazy. I love that he thinks he has the peace of mind to grab his keys. He grabs his keys, runs out of the building, into the elevator, as you guys pointed out. That's the wrong thing to do. Should have taken the stairs. But we get this delightful scene with more mirrors, which reminds me of the elevator scene in Candyman. Don't say it again. And so there, he's like checking his reflection again. Everything seems fine. So I love the way the door opens. And I love these, Oscar Isaac does such a great job with Stephen Grant's mannerisms, even the way he presses for the elevator button. And so on this floor, there's Khonshu, and he races towards the elevator. His legs are very long, as you can see. He's very tall, so he makes up ground very quickly. And he goes to stop the elevator door, and we got a fake out. It's this woman, and it's a very awkward elevator ride. And they find out they're back on 5. So how long has he been in the elevator? He went all the way down and came back up. And he's just like, what is going on with my life? And he turns around and there's Khonshu. And he's like, oh my God. And he wakes up on the bus. I guess Marc took back over and was like, I'm working on it. So he's on the bus and he sees Khonshu in the street watching him. And he's like, oh my, and he disappears. But I love this. When he gets off the bus, again, reflection. Who's on the bus? But Arthur Harrow and other people that he sees in just a moment in the museum. But he first comes in, and those otter videos are cute. I love when they rub their little faces. So the security guard's watching otter videos, and he's like, someone's following me. Look at the duality again. Oh, that's so great. And he's like, you got to stop them. Don't let someone sketchy come in here. And the guy's like, dude, it's a museum. It's a free museum. They're coming in. And he did come in. And he's like, you really do work here. And I love that Arthur Harrow is trying to just figure out what's going on here. And he's not at all nervous. Why should he? He has so much backup, including the security guard at the museum. And Stephen knows he's trapped. And so he has to talk. He's got to let this guy monologue, unfortunately. Although, fortunately, because it's done very well. So he's like, I'm really into Ahmet, man. That's my jam. And so he's like, and so I love the way that Ethan Hawke uses his physical presence to overwhelm. Like, he's not aggressive, but he's forward. Especially someone as meek as Stephen, he's able to really easily overpower him. And he's like, hey, Ahmet, feels like, why would you wait until the garden was destroyed to take out the weeds? And you're like, I don't know if this metaphor totally works. But then he also says, isn't the voice in your head maddening? And you'll find out what that means very soon. But it distracts Oscar Isaac Stephen, because he's like, do you know what I'm going through? And he ends up getting judged. This is what I was like, why did I take this freeze frame? I love this line because Stephen says, I can't help you. And Arthur Harrow says, I'm trying to help you. And I'm like, oh, that's a great line. That's a great way to turn it around. So he gets judged, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's only 2 ways this can go. Or is there? Because he never can get judged. Ahmet doesn't know what to do because there's chaos inside of him. And apparently that's never happened before, because Arthur Harrow is stumped. And he certainly thinks this guy's pretty interesting. And he lets him run off with his funny run, because he's like, don't worry, we're gonna revisit this in just a few hours. So the museum's closed. It's after hours. You see the moon in the sky. I love it. That's so great. And Stephen's working late, doing inventory yet again. And you can see the museum shut down. And you see all these great rooms. It's beautiful. And as he's on his way out, he hears like an animal or something. And I'm like, keep walking. It's not your job. Where's the security? Where's overnight security? But Stephen goes looking. And look at this. First of all, there's like a crocodile in the foreground, which of course is a symbolism of Ahmet. And then of course his reflection is left behind, which is Marc, who notices that Stephen's being followed. So he's looking around. And you can see in the background, because this thing has light up eyes, like Moon Knight, he is being followed by a crazy Egyptian super dog. Someone did bring their dog to the museum, and you can see the shadow. It's so cool. It's like ancient Egyptian drawings. And the chimes come on for an announcement, and it's Arthur Harrow on the loudspeaker saying, Stephen Grant of the gift shop, give me the scarabs or you'll be torn apart viciously. This is not going to go the way you think it's going to go, Arthur Harrow. It's not going to go the way anyone thinks it's going to go. So this thing stands up, it comes up behind as Arthur's talking, and then it gets on all fours, and Stephen throws his backpack to distract him and makes a run for it. But this thing's fast, boy. You can see it on the wall in particular there. It's very well designed. It's so cool. He knocks over a bookcase in the, behind the scenes in the museum. This thing gets on the ceiling. So he goes into the nicest bathroom I've ever seen for employees with lots of mirrors. So he's trapped in there. This thing's trying to get in, and this is it. Marc reveals himself, and he's like, you got to let me take over. And I didn't notice this the first time, any time that I was watching, and I only saw it when I was doing the screen grabs. Look at the cool Egyptian hieroglyphics and artwork that comes alive on the walls in here. Isn't that cool? At first I thought it might be a really swank bathroom, but it's not in there when he first enters. So he's like, and he lets go of his arm. So, because Stephen's holding his injured arm, and Marc's like, I'm okay, buddy. Let me take care of this. And by the way, Oscar Isaac revealed that he used his own brother as a double to shoot these scenes, which is really nice, which is really cool. It must have been fun for them to do that. So he's in the mirror, and he's like, look behind me, man. This thing's coming in. You're going to get killed if you don't let me take over. And then this is a great moment, because instead of not having a good look at Marc in the reflection, we go past Stephen's shoulders. He really finally gets a good look at him, and Marc becomes a real character. Isn't that cool? Instead of just this thing lurking in the side. And he's like, let me take over. And Stephen's like, man, this has just got even crazier. I didn't even know how bad things were. So he lets him take over. He's possessed, and you can see the whole room light up. This thing comes in. This attack dog for Arthur Harrow comes in. And then we cut to outside with just the employee hallway, and the sink gets shot out, and this thing's trying to escape and crawl out, but Moon Knight's like, no, you don't. And there's water on the floor, which creates reflection, right? And so there it is. You can see the duality even here. And Moon Knight's just wailing on this thing. He's just wailing on him because Marc's got a lot of anger issues. He doesn't like this gig. And then he stands up with that great fluorescent light, which looks just like his eyes, providing some cool lighting. And we finally see Moon Knight in all his glory. And then the show's over. And that's the first episode. Directed by Mohad Diab and written by Jeremy Slater. What a dynamic duo. If only they'd done all the episodes. So what did you think? What did you think of the first episode? What really captured your imagination about it? What do you think, if anything, could have been a little bit better? And what do you think of Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke's performances? Share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.